Namaste Gurukulians. Hope all of you are healthy, fit and fine at your home. You know very well your curriculum is going on smoothly, as we are unable to call you in the school premises due to the COVID-19 has been spread across the world. So till then you are to stay back at your home. Do not emerge outside without having any unavoidable walk. Clear? So your work is going on smoothly, and here I, Sanjeev Sharma, lecturer in English, stand before you in order to teach you the second chapter of your book. This is the book you need to carry in your hand, Snapshots. Right? So please carry this book in your hand. I'm going to start the chapter, The Address, written by Marga, Minco. The Address. This is the chapter, right, by Marga, Minco. If you have seen my previous one video, in that video I have told all of you that about the description of Marga Minco. She is one of the prolific and eminent writers of English literature, and she has recently completed her 100 years, and she's from Dutch, Holland. Clear? So this is the story. As you know, the address. Address means the address of someone, right? So it indicates someone's address. And whose address? The address of the narrator. I have depicted the summary of the story. Means it is a story of Mrs. S, who once told her daughter just before her death that she had given her belongings under the observation of one of the well-known neighbors, Mrs. Darling, and she was to carry all the belongings back from Mrs. Darling. And in this way, just after a few days of the death of Mrs. S, the daughter of Mrs. S, she paid a visit to 46 Marga Street. This is the address, 46 Marga Street, right? This is the address where she paid a visit over there. When she paid a visit and she knocked the door, Mrs. Darling, she came outside, and she is a fluffy lady and full of cunningness. When she emerged outside and she opened the door, and she refused to recognize the narrator, as she didn't want to return back the belongings. And what happened after that? Like start word to word reading. So please carry this book in your hand. The page number 10 you are to open. Clear? So I do start it. The Address, Marga Minco. This short story is a poignant account of a daughter who goes in the search of her mother's belongings after the war in Holland. I told you this is the story of a country, Holland. The people of the Holland are called Dutch. Like we live in India, we are called Indians. So Dutch is the citizenship of the narrator and her mother, right? So Dutchians had been living over there just in the periphery of the border, and the war had been started at that time. You know very well, my dear boys, it means whenever the war takes place, automatically the villages in the surrounding of the border, they have to be vacant by the soldiers in order to just save the lives of the people those are living over there. In the same manner, the emergency had been declared, and most of the people, they started moving here and there in order to leave their belongings and houses same as it is and backside, and just emerged. They shifted to a place which was quite suitable for them and safe for them. In the same manner, Mrs. S, she had left her belongings under the observation of her neighbor, Mrs. Darling, and she went away from there. Clear? So I told you when Mrs. S, she was about to die after 10 to 12 years when she had left the place, and she kept a promise to Mrs. Darling that whenever she was coming back, and she would be fetching her belongings back from Mrs. Darling. Clear? But this could not take place, unfortunately. Now what happened? That Mrs. S, she had been suffering from serious disease, and definitely she was about to die. Just before her death, she called her daughter and released the order that, my dear daughter, this is my last wish that you are to fulfill, that you please pay a visit to 46 Marga Street, okay, at the place where we used to reside. If you do remember, the faint memory would be there in your mind that you used to live over there when your age was 8 to 9 years old. Now this time you are quite young and quite capable to get your belongings back. There was one of my well-knowns and my neighbor, Mrs. Darling, and she had kept my whole belongings, like my silver spoons, my curtains, my tablecloth, my utensils, okay, my cardigan, and each and everything, whatever, one by one she had taken over there, and you are to take back from her and by saying these things, and she was no more in the world. And after the cremation of her mother, and then the narrator, the Mrs. S daughter narrator, she paid a visit to the same address, 46 Marconi Street, and she knocked the door. The woman, when she was opening the door, okay, when she finds them, the object evoke memories of her earlier life. When she was going through the memories of her belongings, that it started remembering her, started making her remember the past memories 10 to 12 years before. However, even then she had decided herself to leave all them behind. Why did she decide over there? And resolve, and she was determined to move away from there. Clear? Now this time, as I told you, that she paid a visit to 46 Marconi Street, and she is standing just on the doorstep of Mrs. Darling, 46 Marconi Street, and the story starts now. Do you still know me? I asked. Means the narrator started asking Mrs. Darling, hello Mrs. Darling, do you know me? Do you recognize me, madam? The woman looked at me searchingly. Searching means surprisingly. Searchingly, here full of curiosity, looking with curiosity. Right. She was looking towards me fully curiosity with eagerness. Means who is this girl? And she had come just before my doorstep, and she is asking, do you know me? And she started looking searchingly on her face. She had opened a door with a chink. Means she had opened a door. Whenever the door is being opened, a sound is being produced like in this way, right? So with the chink, openly, suddenly she had opened the door, and she was coming in the visibility of the narrator. I came closer and stood on the step, just on the doorstep, just before the main gate. Some steps were there. Oh, okay. So the narrator, she came quite closer, and she stood herself on the step and started talking to Mrs. Darling. Now, no, I don't know you. Mrs. Darling replied, sorry, I don't recognize you. Who are you? Madam, I am Mrs. S daughter. I am the daughter of Mrs. S. You are one of the old acquaintance. You are one of the old friends. Your neighbor, madam. Did you recognize my mother? Means she used to live with you, along with you 10 to 12 years before, madam. She held her hand on the door as though she wanted to prevent it opening any further. Now, as I have depicted Mrs. Darling, actually the name was Mrs. Darling. This was the name, and she was a cunning lady, as I have depicted. Her temperament was there. Once she had taken the belongings, and she did not want to return it back at any cost. Clear? When she was opening the door, immediately after listening the name of Mrs. S, her hand stopped in between, and it started preventing the door not to open completely, not to be opened right now. And then her face gave absolutely no sign of recognition, but she was a clever woman. She didn't make any kind of facial expression. That means she knew me. She simply started talking. Mrs. S? Who is Mrs. S? I don't know your mother. I don't know you. Means she was rejecting me. She was avoiding me. Now, her face gave me absolutely no sign of recognition. She kept staring at me in silence. Staring means look in continuity. S-T-A-R-I-N-G. Staring means looking continuously. Ghurna in Hindi translation. Right, she kept looking on my face, and she was avoiding me. She didn't want to show any kind of expression on her face that she knew me very well. And then perhaps I was mistaken, and after looking the expression of Mrs. Darling, the narrator, she started thinking that means she was mistaken. By mistake, she had come before the wrong address. This address is wrong, 46 Marconi Street, and this was not the proper address. She had to go somewhere else. The narrator started thinking about it. Then, I thought, perhaps it isn't her. The narrator thought, it was not 46 Marconi Street. It was not the house of Mrs. Darling. I had seen her only once fleetingly. I had seen the narrator many years before when she used to live along with her mother over here. Only once she had a glance of Mrs. Darling. Fleetingly means just have had a look. fleetingly, swiftly you can say, okay, swiftly, or you can say had a glance quickly, okay, Quickly. Quickly she had a glance, just she had a look of Mrs. Darling. Boys, it is naturally whenever you are going to see any person just by having a glance, I think so after 10 years, it's not your cup of tea, it's not your, it's not possible for you that you will be able to recognize this person, because the memory, it goes in our unconscious mind, it doesn't remain in our conscious mind. Means the person whom we are attracting for a long lasting period, might be we can recognize them, but by having a glance of Mrs. Darling, it was not possible for the narrator that she could recognize her. That's why she started thinking that she was mistaken, and by mistake she had come before 46 Marconi Street. Clear all of you? Good. Now, and that was years ago, definitely 10 to 12 years before, and she had looked just simply for a second only. It was most probable that I had rung the wrong door, and most probable means damn sure. She was damn sure, that means that she had rung the wrong doorbell. Now she was coming on the wrong address, and she had to put her efforts in order to find out the same address once again. The woman let go of the door and stepped to the side. The woman, she let go of the door, means that she was hiding herself, stepped to the side, and she was coming on the step of the side, that she was hiding herself in this way. She was wearing, but I had seen the body of Mrs. Darling. She was wearing my mother's green knitted cardigan. It means handcrafted sweater, right? Handcrafted sweater. You might have seen so many females, some of your mothers, grandmothers, they might be knitting some sweaters for you for winter. So this was a knitted sweater, and immediately when she started looking, she had a glance of Mrs. Darling, and she recognized immediately, this sweater, this cardigan belongs to my mother, and this clever lady, this cunning lady, this shrewd lady is wearing it. Oh my. Now, this time the wooden buttons were rather pale from washing. Pale means yellow, okay. The buttons of the cardigans, okay, the color had been faded. It had been faded, means the white button, they had been changed into yellowish look, right? It usually happens whenever one shirt, one pant, or any of the garments you are going to wear, and you are going to wash it again and again. So sometime after 10, 20, 50 washings, automatically the color starts getting faded. The color of the buttons, it had been faded, it had been turned into yellow pale color, right? And but she had recognized it, damn sure this is of my mother's, and this lady, she is wearing deliberately means janbujkar, knowingly she is not going to recognize me. How mean she is. She saw that I was looking at the cardigan and half hid herself again behind the door. When Mrs. Darling, she had noticed me, that means I kept observing her. I kept observing about the cardigan. Immediately she started hiding her body behind the door in this way. Clear? That I should not be, means the narrator should not be able to have a glance on the sweater. Clear? So, but I knew how that I was right. But one thing they were damn sure for me. One thing was quite sure for the narrator, that she didn't come on the wrong address. The address was correct, 46 Marconi, and the same lady was standing before her eyes, Mrs. Darling. Clear all of you? Yes. Well, you knew my mother? I asked. Means, don't you know my mother? You know my mother? Tell me. The narrator started asking. Have you come back? Said the woman. Then the woman, she replied, have you come back? I thought that no one had come back. I thought means the person many years before, those had left their places when the war got started. No one did come back. And how did you come back? Only me. Then narrator replied, Madam, only me. It is me that who had come back. A door opened and closed in the passage. Passage means in the gallery inside. After opening the door, the gallery, it was leading to the inside doors, inside rooms. And there was a door of the room and it was opened and closed behind her. A musty smell. Musty means bad smell. Musty means bad, means unpleasant. The unpleasant smell, it emerged. Emerged means came outside. Emerged means came out. An unpleasant smell, it came outside and I started realizing it. I regret, I cannot do anything for you. Then Mrs. Darling, she replied, I'm sorry, I cannot do anything. I apologize for you. I have come here specially on the train. Then the narrator, she replied back to Mrs. Darling, Madam, just think about me. After crossing a miles distance, means I have come by train over here from that place. I wanted to talk to you for a moment. Just give me only 5 minutes, madam. I simply want to have a talk to you. I want to have a conversation with you, madam. It's not convenient for me now, said woman. The cunning woman, Mrs. Darling, she replied, no. Aggressively she said, means it's not convenient for me. She was very arrogant woman. She was a cunning lady. Deliberately she was avoiding narrator that she should not demand her belongings back, which she didn't want to hand over back to her, right? Then she said that, no, it's not convenient for me. I'm busy quite. I can't see you another time. Means I can't see you. I can't meet you right now. See you another time. She nodded. Nod means moving the head in this way, and cautiously, carefully closed the door as though no one inside the house should be disturbed. Slowly she closed the door that the family members of Mrs. Darling, they should not be disturbed inside. I stood where I was on the step. I kept standing over there on the same place. Clear? On the same place I kept standing over there. And then the curtain in front of the bay window moved. Means just the main window was there. Nearby the window, the main curtains were there. Suppose this is the main gate, and along with the main gate, the room was there, and just the room was having a window. On the window, some curtains were there. Okay, and someone stared at me, and out of curtain I saw. Stared means to look in continuity. Clear? Staring, to look continuously. Someone was looking towards me in continuously, and would then have asked what I wanted. Again the sound was emerging outside and started asking, what do you want? Oh, nothing, madam. The woman would have asked. It was nothing. The woman she might have asked. It was nothing, madam. It was nothing. I looked the nameplate once again on the door, main gate. Just along with the main gate, there was a nameplate. Clear? I started looking it carefully. Darling, D-O-R-L-I-N-G. It said, it was written over there in black letters on white enamel. Enamel means the plate, the white plate made of marble stone. And on the jamb, on the surface of it, a bit higher, the number was written, number 46. 46 Markney Street. This was the number. It was written over here. As I walked slowly to the station, I thought about my mother who had given me the address years ago. Means I had left the place and started moving outside. When I was going back to the station, I started thinking about my mother who had given me this address, 46 Markney Street. And it had been in first half of the war. Means it was in the first half of the war. I was home for a few days. Means I came back to home for just only for a few days, and it struck me immediately, and something or other about the rooms had changed. Means I had just only for changing environment, for changing the rooms, atmosphere and everything. I missed various things. I was missing so many things. My mother was surprised. I should have noticed so quickly. Means my mother, she was surprised when my mother, she had told me about the remembrance of the place where we used to live many years before, and I recognized immediately, and she was surprised ki how quickly I could be able to recognize those memories. Then she told me about Mrs. Darling. I had never heard of her, but apparently she was an old acquaintance of my mother. Then she told me about Mrs. Darling, whom I didn't know who she was, but from outer view, apparently means from outer view, bahari roop se, I knew only one thing, that she was the known of my mother, whom she had not seen for many years, and she had not encountered to my mother for many years. She had suddenly turned up and renewed their contact. Now this time she had turned up right now. She means I had to make an interaction with that lady and renewed their contact, means my and her contact took place once again. Since then she had come regularly, means when my mother, she was having an acquaintance with her, and since that time she started coming to my home regularly, clear, and I knew her because I had seen just little glance of Mrs. Darling. Now after a long gap I could not recognize her properly, but when I revealed my name, and she is avoiding me because she didn't want to return the belongings back to me. So all these things I'm sorry, all these things had shown clear cut that Mrs. Darling, she didn't want to return the belongings back to narrator. Okay, what happened after that? What did the narrator do? Clear, when she was going back to the station. So all these things we will discuss in the next part. Till then, take care, have a nice day, namaskar.